Welcome to the Element Q podcast. I'm your host, TJ Woodward, and I'm thrilled to have you join us for this empowering journey. Each week, we shine a light on the authors, thought leaders, therapists, coaches, and healers of all types who are making a difference in the LGBTQ plus community. Together, we honor those who came before us, the courageous and resilient trailblazers who stood for our rights and recognition. Their strength laid the foundation we stand on today. Here, we celebrate their legacy by diving into the stories, insights, and tools that inspire gentleness, healing, and transformation. So get ready to be uplifted and empowered. This is the Element Q podcast. My guest today is one of my closest friends and colleagues, Dr. Temple Hayes. Temple is a global thought leader, a best-selling author, and a difference maker on planet Earth. And I think that is just the baseline of who she is as a human being. Her full bio, of course, will be in the show notes, but who she is someone who electrifies the world through her consciousness. So Temple, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm so thrilled you're doing this podcast. You know, speaking of the world needing someone, that would be you. So anyway, you can make a mighty noise and have your voice out there. I'm really thrilled and always honored to be part of what you're doing.
Oh, thank you, Temple. You and I have had some incredible conversations over the years. So this is a continuation of that. And you're one of my favorite people to talk about because, quite frankly, you just never know what you're going to say. And you never know what's going to emerge as we come together for a conversation. And as I reflect on LGBTQ+, the community, everything happening in the world, I think of a term that you use, and I love this, and I actually, use it in one of my books and give you credit, of course, because it's important. You use the term woundology. And when I think about the LGBTQ community, I think there are, of course, a lot of wounds because of how we've grown up in society. And sometimes I see the community reacting out of or living from this woundology. So how do we honor that, recognize the importance of that, but also move beyond it?
Well, for me, I really come from the premise that I'm not broken.
Yeah.
And I know that's a big part of your work and what you've been teaching for many years. I don't want to live as anything broken. I don't believe the divine creates something broken. I think our psychology can be broken. I think our hearts can be broken. But as far as us and our humanity, we're not broken. And I remember as a child, when I knew that I was gay, we didn't call it gay then. I mean, back then we called it the word homosexual tendencies, really a big word for a, 12-year-old to be able to master and say. But that being said, that's what we called it. And so when I went from being the favorite granddaughter, the apple in my father's eye, to people no longer made eye contact with me. Yeah, there were some wounds there. There was some suffering there. And I had an ache in my solar plexus. Like my spirit is broken, and yet I was determined to find peace with that. Underneath all that, there was the core that I believed that I was meant to have a purpose, and I was put here, for a reason. And so after 15 years of trying the other kind of medicine called alcohol, I started really getting deeper into the work of understanding my wholeness and forgiving those who did not know better. And here's the thing, it was up to me to show people my wholeness. You don't get to show people your wholeness by constantly reminding them of when they knew you as broken, because it's a repeated cycle. You're showing the same kind of behavior and calling it something different.
Wow.
So
incredible.
Right?
Wow.
Right? So I really wanted to give people, let's give them something to talk about. I wanted to give people something to talk about, that I am whole, I am holy, I have always been whole. And I am not going to accept any level of judgment or inadequacies. Just not going to do it.
Wow. What you're, of course, speaking to is also the foundation of my work. And I know that's why we have connected. Our paths in so
Yes,
many ways are so similar.
yes,
We're both people in long-term recovery. We're both people in the LGBTQ community. And I think both of us have gone through an experience of feeling broken at some point or people seeing us as broken. And I know for myself, I carried so much shame, and that shame led to my addictive tendencies, my homosexual and my addictive tendencies.
hmm
And let me tell you, I tended toward finding relief outside of myself, and it worked for a while. So I am really grateful in a strange way for drugs and alcohol, but it didn't really actually heal this yearning, this ache. And that ache, in my experience looking back, was this yearning for wholeness because on some level, I knew I was whole and complete. I look at a baby and I see the pristine nature of that, and I had a cognitive understanding that I wasn't broken, but boy, did I feel broken. And of course, I externalized that. The world wants me to be broken, right? And as I
Right,
started doing my healing, I'm like, actually, the world, quite frankly, isn't thinking about me. It's up to
right.
me now to reconnect with my wholeness, my true nature, and then be this beneficial presence on the planet. But it started with me doing my own work of returning to that wholeness. So I know this is why you and I connect on such a deep level, because I think there's so much narrative about how people are broken or not good enough. And maybe if we find the right partner, we can be free or get the right job or find our purpose, yada, yada. But the deeper truth is, as I connect with who I am, then I can be that in the world. And that's a very different way of living.
Yeah, it's part of when we look at shamanism and we look at the root in which we were born, our root chakra, the whole voice of the root chakra is I belong here.
Mm,
I belong here. I have a reason for being here. And when we feel ungrounded and unloved, then we carry that forth in what is relational to us. What do we relate to? And so we project, do I belong here? Do I not belong here? And I know for, many years I could be with 30 people that says, "Oh, I just really enjoy you so much." And, or let me give you a better real life example. When I traveled as a motivational speaker in my 30s, which was, not long ago, I would get critiqued by people. And I dreaded being criticized so much that I didn't even want to read the forms. But let's say out of 200, that all of them pretty much were good because I knew what I was talking about. But there would be two people that would
right.
say, fake smile. Um, I, I don't think she's real. What would I think about
Yeah.
that?
Yes.
Very much not matched. And I call forth the people on this planet today that have a category called LGBTQIA, or the category that keeps you from feeling your feelings,
Mm,
the category that keeps you from being really a person with compassion. As you leave your church or your synagogue or your place on Sunday or during the week, and you go, "Oh, yeah, those LGBTQIA people, they are the ones causing all the problems in the world." No, it's not a person that's causing problems in the world. It's the hate and
mm,
lack of love that's causing problems in the world. And as long as I can desensitize myself, as long as any time I put one word to categorize anything, I've already missed and closed my heart from having an experience. It can be that you have decided that you don't like animated films, they're so silly. But have you actually sat through one recently? They will bring you to tears. They're that good.
mhm.
Have you sat and listened to someone like TJ Woodward, like Temple Hayes? Have you really heard our heart? Do you know what it's like to go from being someone that people adore to they won't look at you when you walk in the room because you are too much for their limitations and their own scars and their own fear? That's when you get to the root of something. And that's what you're calling people to do with this podcast is stop labeling us. Stop labeling anything, really, because it eliminates. It's like I am not a person isn't cancer. They are a person who currently has cancer. There's a big difference.
Yeah.
And right?
Yeah, it's so incredible because as you're talking, I'm thinking about how the tendency with the human experience, simply said, if I feel broken, I see the world as broken. And if I see the world as broken, then I think it's my job to change it. That's just my story of me in my 20s. The world is
Right.
broken and I need to fix it. And at some point,
Yes.
and I'm not saying there's anything inherently right or wrong about that. It's just how does it really actually work? How effective is it? Right. So if I say things like I'm going to fight for peace, I want to pause and say, let's look at that for a moment. What does that fight create? I understand it. Listen, I moved to San Francisco in 1991. It was the sort of the end of the ACT UP days. I was in these demonstrations. I watched people throw chairs through the glass. And there was at one point
Wow.
I thought, okay, I know people are hurt and angry. I understand. I am starting to understand the deep wounding that I have around my identity that was given to me because the truth is, it's gay is only a little part of who and what I am, but I so identified with that and I felt so persecuted at some point. And when I saw it externalized with this rage, I thought, that is an important part of the process and it's not my important not for me, right? Because I
Hmm.
realize that that only creates more, never wanting to negate the importance or the shoulders we stand on of the people who quote unquote fought for us. But at some point what you said is so important because at some point the way we create change is by sitting down and having a human connection with someone who we might perceive to be different.
Yes.
Am I willing to go? My dad and his wife live, they say they live in LA, Lower Alabama, and I just love that. Am I willing to go to that LA from this LA and sit down and talk to some folks who might not see me the way that I see me? And am I projecting onto them and all those layers? Because when we other someone, that's where all the issues of the world happen. So, how do we move beyond that? How do we honor the fight that's happened within this community and then move into the healing? And I know that's a big question, but I also know you are a big spirit temple and you are just like I said, you ignite consciousness on planet Earth. And I think it's time for this conversation.
Hmm. I feel we're on to something as far as the significance of any time you label anything, you're already limiting what your reality may be about it, right? Fair to say, you know, like men are this way.
Yeah.
Well, not the men I know, women are this way, whatever. That being said, it's like years ago when I used to teach about what God can be in your life, or the divine can be in your life, or the creator, whatever you call it, doesn't really matter. It matters what you believe about it. And I recall, people, it was such a big idea and how you would break it down. And I know you would do this too in your own teaching. You would break it down by saying what happened in your life today that was unexpected.
Mm,
What were you thinking about and what were you affirming and somewhat unplanned that something showed up in your life and you're like, what? Out of the blue. And so we started living in the out of the blue is another name for the universe and how it works because it's really for you unless you have the eyes and the heart that say it's always against you and then it's still working for you by being against you
yeah.
because that's your reality. And I think that the same is true when if we can break down instead of the big picture of categorizing people into what people's passion are, what they really care about. Why would anybody be willing to go through what we've gone through just to be who we are? I mean, really, why would anybody put themselves through that um, just to say, this is who I am? Um, it fascinates me, the judgment that is out there.
Yeah.
But if we could continue to have messages like we're having right now, to have talks like we do and programs like you do, and remind people to surround yourself with a boat of people that love you, with a group of people that get you, that see you. If, here's the key, you have to be willing to see and get yourself.
Mm,
A lot of this stuff is projection onto others about what one feels somebody thinks about them. And there's no truth to that. It's that woundology projection of continuing to project. Well, if you knew all of me, you're probably not going to like me. So that's the healing.
yes.
That's the healing of, and it's not as simple. People say, "Oh, I get so tired of people talking about I love myself the way I am," and oh, and it's so simple. No, not when you go to live it every day. Not when you look at your choices every day. Take it, TJ, go.
No, I'm just on fire with what you're saying, and I'm
Hmm.
remembering a time in my life that I was absolutely sure that I had done the healing around my internalized homophobia. Let's
Hmm.
just name it. I grew up in Indiana. I was born a few decades ago, and I was called the F word almost every day. Right. And I thought, no big deal, because the way I handled it is to be really rebellious, like the jocks in the school spray painted Frisco Row over our lockers. And I'm like, they're so smart and observant that my gay friends and I are so out, right? But we weren't really out, Simple, because it was too scary to even say that with one another. I had a
Hmm.
relationship with a person that we couldn't even actually have true intimacy because we weren't even each of us willing to acknowledge the truth about ourselves. And
Mm.
so fast forward to when I went back to school at Unity Institute in like 2004 or 5, and I was, 20, almost 20 years sober at that point, and I thought I had done my healing. I had been in therapy for years. I had been in spiritual community, and I remember in the final week of my 5-year program at Unity Institute, the question was asked, who wants to use an example from their life for this week for us to work with these advanced metaphysics concepts? And my hand shot up and I said, they're not paying me what I'm worth. And so that was written on the board. They're not paying me what I'm worth. And we went through this process the entire week using my example. And on Friday afternoon, the instructor looked at me and said, what was it like for you growing up being called the F word and being simultaneously attracted to those same guys? What was it like for you moving to San Francisco and seeing all these men holding hands and loving one another and feeling unworthy of that love? And Temple, I sobbed for about
Mm.
20 minutes and I was in the fetal position on the floor. And, the folks at Unity were just there with me and holding me. And it was at that point I realized that that deeper healing was me going back and caring for the little 6-year-old that was told, don't look like a girl, don't walk like a girl, don't talk like a girl, don't act like a girl. And I remember thinking, there's something wrong with me because I act like a girl. There are so many layers to it, but the reason I'm telling that story is it's not really only a conscious process. For me, it was that deeper healing of allowing that wound to come to the surface so that it could be healed.
Mm. I love that. As you were saying that, I still remember it was like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. I was 19 years old, and the minister in Unity was inviting me to dinner. And I don't know why I just blurted it out, but I said, probably because I had a crush on her, but I went, truth be known.
Yeah.
Okay. There you go. It's out there. I said, well, I'm gay. And she said, well, where do you want to go to eat? I said, I just told you I'm gay. She said, what does that have to do with anything? What does that have to do with anything? It's a small part of
Mm,
your life. We don't care about that in unity. We're all created in the image and likeness of the divine. And so it's when we're into our woundology, I think we take away from the ability to be the winners that we are.
mm,
And and when you think of us as winners, what we are called to do is show humanity that love comes in different packages, just like the animal kingdom is starting to do now. Deal with us. We come in different packages. Don't be intimidated. Don't try to kill us. Don't try to eliminate us off the planet. Your rules and your policies aren't going to keep us from being fully expressed. That's way back in the 40s. We aren't doing that anymore. There's nothing anyone can really do that can hinder us from expressing who we are as activated people in our own consciousness. Our soul is activated now because we have fully seen the sun, seen the righteous day, that we are whole and we are holy, and there's no place to go back to broken. And so if you're sitting there and you feel judged by others, stop judging you. If you feel that people do not respect you, respect you.
mm.
If you really want to make a difference as an LGBTQIA, be a winner. Release these addictions that bind you, that keep you stuck, that you're an apology. You're constantly apologizing for yourself. I'm not into that anymore. I know you're not, TJ. I acknowledge my wrongdoings, but I am not an apology. And I refuse to apologize for my very existence of who I am because I am part of evolution. And we are made this way because we're a part of evolution.
Oh my gosh.
And
Yes.
right?
I'm just keep continue. I
Yeah.
had to just pause and take a breath because I'm just so drinking in everything you're saying. So please
Mhm.
continue. I love
No,
it.
because we are part of the sacred chapter of life. And many of us were called to be here at this particular time to live on the planet that we live on. We can't say there's accidents and then consider ourselves one. Come on.
That's right. Yeah.
That's messed up. Oh, there
And
are no accidents on the planet, but I could be one. Not
I could be
hardly.
one.
No.
And you know what is interesting as you're speaking, and sort of like my story and then what you're saying, I realize that the work happens on a conscious level and a subconscious level, and then the deepest work is this, what's really trapped, that shadow work, right? And that
Hmm.
that simply is to have an understanding, if you're resonating with what Temple is saying, and you're having this idea or even a felt sense of like, yeah, but, because I had yeah, buts for years when I was hearing
Hmm.
this. I would go to hear like Marianne Williamson, or I would go hear, people who I now really respect and admire that were saying something really different than we're broken and we need to fix ourselves, or that we're bad people, but we need to like redeem ourselves, and that whole old consciousness. But I had the yeah, but. And so if you're having the yeah, but in this moment, what I invite is to think about the moments when before you believed you were broken, the preciousness that you came in as, and see if you can get in touch with when you started to believe that you were limited or damaged or broken or not good enough. I'm thinking about my wonderful friend Helen, and she tells the story of growing up in Mississippi. I never ask a person's age, but I know she's a little older than I am. And she said, she would walk down the sidewalk, and if a white person walked toward her, the parent or the person that was her caregiver would pull her off the sidewalk. No one ever talked about it. You're a black person, you step off the sidewalk. She said
Hmm.
it was the not talking about it that caused so much shame. And the message was you're inferior and you're not as good just simply because of the color of your skin. And so my invitation for someone is, if you have those moments that you can remember, Sometimes it's just a look. I remember my grandmother had a gay brother, which is kind of shocking because they were born in the early 1900s. He had a male partner. We called them both uncle, but they were not gay. She went to her grave saying
Hmm.
they were not gay. No one talked about it. And there was this moment he came over and I went running to him. I was probably 7, and I threw my arms around him and he pushed me off and said, "Boys don't hug men like that." And that moment of
Wow.
shame just shot through me because he had so much. And of course he did, born in 1900, being a gay man and trying to like be out as possible. And I just kind of absorbed that shame. And it was so deeply buried. It was concretized in my unconscious. So the deeper work for me, yes, it was like, I'm going to stand proud. I'm going to love myself. The deeper work is like, yes, but I need to embrace that little 7-year old and love that little 7-year old and allow myself to feel all of that because what did I do? I buried it. I thought there was something wrong with me. I shouldn't act this way. He doesn't love me. I mean, everything that happened in an instant. And then it took me all these years to heal that. And it was just this one moment. And it wasn't even my shame, it was his. And it was his
Mm.
parent and his parents' parent.
But what's fascinating on the bigger scale of things too is that every time you're around a group of people or you're in a room where people are sharing intimately, you can see that 7-year old within everybody that you're talking to. And you have the capacity within that vibration to open them up, whether they know it or whether they don't, to bring them to that place of enlightenment. And to me, that enlightenment meaning lighten up, for goodness sakes, and in that compassion, to me, that's what compassion has meant for me for a long time because we go through experiences we do, we're human beings, we're in human suits and those kind of things. But the beauty of compassion is to be able to come pass it on to the next set of people, to the next group, to the next moment, because there's nothing like having a real experience that you can identify with. I love the fact that when you and I stand and we talk to people that are longing to be in recovery, that are longing to let go of addiction, I can approach it as an expert, not school expert, but life hard knocks. Coming up on 38 years of sobriety, I feel like I have a lot to say. Surviving myself as a gay woman in a little small town that didn't even know how to spell the word metaphysics. Okay, I feel like I have something to say. And so that is the point we're calling into all of you, is that you are not an apology. You are here to activate the winner within you. And if you really want to shake people up, be a winner, be
Mm,
successful, be successful at whatever you choose, whatever that looks like. Just stop trying to mock or be somebody that you're not
yeah.
because it never works. And to me, that is where LGBTQIA people, that's where we had a jump in life because we can't be like anybody else. So much so that we're willing to go through anything in order not to be somebody else. That's a
Mm.
huge sacred journey right there.
That sure is. Perhaps that's the greatest journey is simply
Hmm.
being who I am, authentically me, and not necessarily from a place of see me being myself, but from a place of feel me being my authentic self. And that
Yes.
felt sense, we know that, right? How many times, and I know Temple people tell you this all the time, I don't know what it is about you, but I just feel safe or I feel seen or
Mm.
I just they may not say this, but their nervous system calms down. And so that's
Mm.
the effect that we get to have. In other words, the greatest gift I can offer the world, and by the way, Lao Tzu said this so many years ago, but the greatest gift I can offer the world is my own transformation. So the
Yeah.
greatest gift we can offer people now, whether it's an LGBTQ person who is experiencing shame or feels broken or was rejected by their family or their religion, or it's a person who has a judgment of someone who is LGBTQIA plus, we say love is here, and as
Yeah.
we do our own healing, that not only has a ripple effect, but it stands as a demonstration that it's possible. All of us have the ability at any moment to go back to the old belief that we're broken or damaged and there's something wrong and we have to fight for our rights, or we can remember this greater reality that there's a power within me so much greater than any policy or president or a group of people or someone who wants to like pull us down for any reason. We are actually very powerful, each of us.
Well, you're spot on in the fact that anytime you buy into a belief that you've done something wrong, you become enslaved to doing what someone tells you for the determination to be right.
Yes.
And so we are not people that are willing to be herded and to be driven because we are thinking. We are thinking people, we are conscious people, we are woke. I love the fact that, who was it that said, Jane Fonda, that woke people are simply people that care about other people. What a concept, right? Um, but there's no need to buy into all the data that wants to enslave you from being phenomenal because it's who we are. It's when we attempt to not be that we suffer.
That's right.
Mhm.
Pretending to be something other than what we are is something that creates that ripple effect as well.
Uh,
So, believe it or not, Temple, we're coming to the close of our conversation. I'm
I don't know how it
wondering,
happens.
it happens so quickly with us. I'm wondering if there's anything in your heart that you want to share in closing. Obviously, let people know how they can find you. We'll put all of your contact in the show notes as well. But is there anything that you want to say in closing?
Well, I know beyond the idea, I know that many of you that are listening have been moved today. There's an aspect of your emotional body that is awake. And I would urge you not to get into busy making or fix it taking. I
Mm,
would move into a space of making a call, reaching out to 3 or 4 people that you love and that love you, and build upon that. That's what changes your life, is when you can look at the people that you can pick up the phone on your contacts and go, yes, 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 and immerse yourself in that energy and build upon that, and stop trying to fish for the people that they don't love themselves, because they're never going to love you because it has nothing to do with you. It never has, and it never will.
wow.
So hold fast into that wonderful, beautiful energy. That's not selfishness. That's healthy living right there.
Wow. Thank you, Temple. As always, I feel more alive than when this conversation started. And I felt pretty
Me
alive
too.
when it started, but even more alive now. And I always appreciate collaborating with you. And there are things that emerge when we're in a conversation that just open
Yeah.
my heart to a new way of being and seeing. And so, what I want to say in closing to anyone watching or listening, if no one has told you today, you are a whole and complete being. You came into the world as a precious being, a spark of divinity. And maybe some people have told you other than that. And this is the moment that we get to unlearn that and stand in a greater reality. Thank you, everyone, so much. I'm so grateful for the Element Q podcast and for each of you. Peace and blessings, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Element Q podcast. It's an honor to walk this path of healing and transformation with you. Remember, the courage and resilience of those who came before us live on in each of us. Let's continue to carry their legacy forward as we support one another in creating a world filled with love, gentleness, and empowerment. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with someone who needs to hear it. Together, we're building a brighter future, one story at a time. Until next time, I'm TJ Woodward, and this has been the Element Q podcast.